Rain pounded the windshield as Rowan Jensen gripped the steering wheel tighter, squinting through the blur of water and headlights coming the opposite way. His 6-year-old daughter, Sadie, sat bundled in the backseat, humming softly to herself under a pink blanket, her little rain boots swinging off the edge of her booster seat. "Almost home, sweetheart," he said, forcing a smile into the rearview mirror. He didn't see the crash happen. He heard it glass shattering, metal folding, tires screeching, and then caught a flash of silver skidding off the road and slamming into a tree just beyond the curve. Without thinking, Rowan jerked his truck to the shoulder, threw it in park, and jumped out into the storm. "Stay in the truck, Sadie." "Lock the doors," he yelled, already soaked to the bone as he sprinted toward the wreck. The silver car was crumpled on one side, steam hissing from the hood. The driver's side door was jammed. Rowan yanked it once, twice nothing. He ran around, kicked open the passenger door, and crawled inside. A woman was slumped over the wheel, her long dark hair dripping with rain. Blood trickled from her temple. Hey, can you hear me? You okay?" he asked, reaching out. She groaned softly. "Alive." Rowan slid his arm under her back and lifted her out of the seat, careful, steady. She wasn't heavy, but she was limp, cold. He carried her through the rain and into his truck, laid her gently across the passenger seat. Sadie gasped. "Daddy, is she okay?" "She'll be fine. We're gonna help her," he said, brushing the woman's wet hair from her face. "Just hang in there, all right." By the time they reached the small, urgent care clinic in town, the woman had stirred a little. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed and unfocused. "You're okay," Rowan said again, softly this time. "You were in a crash." "I got you out." She blinked at him, trying to speak, but the nurse rushed over and took her from his arms. As they wheeled her inside, she looked back at him. Wait, who or why? But she was gone before she could finish the sentence. 2 days later, Rowan was back at work at the auto shop. His boss had cut his hours again, and the bills were piling up. He didn't have time to think about the woman anymore. She was probably long gone until she walked in. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but clear. He looked up from under the hood of a pickup, wiping the grease from his hands. It took him a second to recognize her, cleaned up, no blood, dressed in a simple white blouse and jeans, but it was her. Same dark eyes, same cautious expression. You're okay," Rowan said, stepping out. "Yes, thanks to you." She stepped closer, holding out her hand. "I'm Sienna Cade." He shook it. "Rowan Jensen, you, gave me a hell of a scare." "I gave myself one too," she said with a small laugh. "The doctor said if you hadn't pulled me out when you did. I'm just glad you're all right." She looked around the shop, her brows knitting together. "Do you own this place?" he laughed. "God, no, I just work here, part-time lately." Sienna hesitated. "And the little girl, she was your daughter." "Yeah, Sadie, she's everything." There was a pause, short and quiet. "I was hoping to buy you a coffee to say thank you," she said. He glanced around the shop. "I'd love to, but I gotta pick Sadie up from school soon." Sienna's eyes lit up. "Then, maybe I could get you both ice cream, if that's okay. I'd like to thank her too." Rowan studied her for a second. She didn't seem like she was faking anything. "And Sadie would love that." "All right," he said. 5 o'clock, the place on Main. I'll be there." Sienna was waiting outside the ice cream shop when Rowan and Sadie arrived. She wore a navy coat, her hair down, and her smile lit up the fading day. "Hi, Sadie," she said, crouching down. Sadie peeked out from behind Rowan's leg, then grinned. "Are you the lady from the car?" Sienna nodded. "I am, and I heard you were very brave," Sadie beamed. "Daddy was the brave one." They sat at a corner table with melting cones and sticky napkins. Sienna laughed easily, her eyes shining every time Sadie said something funny. Rowan watched her, curious. She didn't talk much about herself, but she asked about Sadie, about Rowan's work, his life. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked after a while. "No," she said, stirring her coffee. "I was just driving through. I needed to get away from New York for a bit." "City girl," he teased lightly. "Guilty," she smiled. "But don't hold it against me," he chuckled. "I won't." Sienna glanced at her watch and frowned. "I should go, but I'd like to see you again, both of you." Sadie tugged on Rowan's sleeve. "Can she come to the pumpkin patch?" Rowan raised an eyebrow at Sienna. "It's a very exclusive invitation." "I'd be honored," she said, her eyes locked on Rowan's now. "Really?" The pumpkin patch became dinner. Dinner became coffee. Coffee became long walks in the park while Sadie ran ahead, giggling. Sienna never talked about her job or her money, not once. Rowan figured maybe she was between things or just didn't want to talk about it. He didn't pry, but he noticed things. Like how she wore the same coat, but her boots were real leather. How her watch was sleek and expensive looking. How she tipped waiters like she wasn't counting. And then there was the car. One night, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the shop. A man in a suit stepped out and handed Rowan a card. "Miss Cade asked me to drop this off." Rowan opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $25,000. He stared, stunned. "Return it," he said immediately. "I'm not taking her money." The man hesitated. "She thought you might say that." Rowan didn't care. He gave it back and slammed the door. That night he called her. "You tried to give me money." "I wasn't trying to insult you, Rowan. I just wanted to help. I don't need charity." "I didn't mean it like that." There was a pause before she said quietly, "I didn't tell you everything." "About who I am." "No, you didn't." "I wanted to. I was going to. I just like being around you without all that." "Without what?" "The money, the name, the pressure." He sighed, rubbing his face. "So who are you really?" She took a breath. "I'm the CEO of Cade International. My father built the company. I took over 5 years ago." Rowan blinked. "You're a billionaire." "Yes." Silence. "I'm still the woman you pulled out of a car in the rain," she said quietly. "And I'm still the woman who's been falling for you every day since." He didn't know what to say, not yet. But the look on her face, the way her voice trembled, he knew she meant it. And for the first time in years, his heart started to stir. Rowan didn't sleep that night. He lay on the worn couch in the living room, listening to Sadie's soft breathing from her bedroom, the ceiling fan creaking faintly above him. Every time he closed his eyes, Sienna's voice echoed back, "I'm the CEO of Cade International." He hadn't looked her up. Didn't need to. The way she'd said it, like it cost her something, told him everything he needed to know. It wasn't about the title. It was about what it meant to step into someone's life pretending to be something else. Even if she hadn't meant to, by morning, he still hadn't decided what to feel. But when Sadie came out in her pajama shirt and climbed into his lap, her tiny hands warm on his face, he knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, he had to protect her from it. Later that afternoon, he saw Sienna again. She was sitting on the bench outside the library, the same one where she'd once read to Sadie while Rowan ran inside to return overdue books. She stood when she saw him, brushing her coat behind her. "You came," she said, her voice careful. "I almost didn't." "Then why did you?" "Because you didn't lie," he said slowly. "You just didn't tell me, and I don't know what that means yet, but I figured the least I could do is let you explain. I didn't come here expecting to meet anyone. I was trying to get away from everything. My board, my father's lawyers, the press. They've been trying to push me into a merger I don't want, so I drove, for hours, until I ended up here." She took a breath. "And then I crashed into a tree and you carried me out like you'd known me your whole life. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't care what I had. You just cared that I was alive. That does something to you." "I care about honesty," he said. "I've had enough people walk away without it." Her eyes didn't leave his. "I'm not walking away." He looked at her for a long moment. "This isn't your world, small towns. Manual labor, raising a kid alone, it's not shiny." "I'm not looking for shiny," she said. "I've had shiny. It's exhausting." A gust of wind blew a strand of hair across her face and she didn't move to fix it. Rowan reached out and tucked it behind her ear before he could stop himself. "You're not what I expected, Sienna Cade. Neither are you, Rowan Jensen." They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the town moving quietly around them. Then she reached into her coat pocket. "I didn't come empty-handed," she said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "This is for Sadie, not you." He took it and opened it, brow furrowing. "It was an invitation to what?" he asked. "A children's author I know is doing a private reading in the city. I told her about Sadie's obsession with adventure books. She agreed to do a small event, just 20 kids. I want to take you both." Rowan stared at the paper. "You're asking me to take my daughter to the city, to your world." "No," she said. "I'm asking you to let me bring a little of mine into hers." He didn't answer right away. But then he folded the paper again and slid it into his back pocket. "I'll talk to her." That weekend, they went. Sienna sent a car. Rowan had almost refused, but Sadie's face when it pulled up a sleek black vehicle with Candy in the back seat and a driver who called her Miss Jensen was too much to argue with. The event was in a rooftop garden, tucked away from the noise of the city. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and books lined shelves like treasures waiting to be opened. Sadie was glued to the author's side the entire time, asking questions and getting her book signed with a flourish. While she listened wide-eyed, Rowan walked to the edge of the rooftop. The skyline stretched out in every direction, towering and glittering. Sienna joined him, a glass of sparkling water in her hand. "She looks happy," Rowan said. "She is. You did all this for her. I'd do it again." He turned to her. "Why? Because she's your heart, and I want to be part of it." That stopped him. She wasn't asking for space, she was asking for something deeper. "I don't know how to be part of your world," he said. "I never even finished college." "I don't care," she said. "You built a life from nothing. You raise your daughter with more love than most people get in a lifetime. You fix what's broken. That's more than I can say for most of the men I know." He looked down at her, searching her eyes. "You're not scared of this." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." Before he could say anything else, Sadie ran over, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Daddy, she gave me 3 books. And she said I could write her a letter." "That's amazing, sweetheart." Sadie looked up at Sienna. "Can she come to my school play next week?" Rowan hesitated, but Sienna's smile was gentle. "I'd love to." On the drive back, Sadie fell asleep against Rowan's side. He watched her, then glanced at Sienna. "You're not going to disappear after this, are you?" "I wasn't planning to," she said softly. "Good." The car drove through the quiet countryside, the city lights fading behind them. Rowan didn't know what this was yet, but it felt real. It felt possible. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid to hope. Rowan stood at the edge of the school auditorium, his arms folded across his chest as Sadie skipped toward the stage with the rest of her class. He caught sight of her red headband bobbing with each step, and the sight pressed something warm against his ribs. She'd been practicing her lines every night for a week, pacing the living room with her script clutched in both hands like it was a treasure map. A rustle of movement beside him drew his attention. Sienna slipped in through the side entrance, her coat draped neatly over one arm, dressed in a deep aubergine blouse and slacks that looked tailored but not flashy. She scanned the crowd until her eyes landed on him, then made her way over. "You made it," he said, shifting to give her space. "I said I would." He noticed the small bouquet. She held 3 wild daisies and a single sunflower, tied together with twine, those for Sadie, of course. "I know she's not the lead, but I figured she deserves something for stealing the show anyway. She's going to lose her mind." Sienna smiled, but there was a flicker of something behind it, hesitation, maybe. Rowan caught it. "You all right? I had a call earlier, from someone on my board. They know I've been here. One of them saw the photos from the rooftop event." He frowned. "Photos? They weren't public, but someone leaked them. Me, standing next to you. You and Sadie watching the reading. So now they're poking around. They're asking questions about whether I've gone completely off the rails, whether I've forgotten my obligations. Because you spent time with a mechanic and his daughter," he said, voice low. "Because I stepped out of their perfect box," she replied. "And they don't like it when I make decisions they can't control." Rowan leaned slightly closer, his voice steady. "You think this is going to get ugly?" "I think it already has," she admitted. "They're pushing harder on the merger again. I told them I wasn't ready to discuss it, and they made it clear that wasn't the answer they wanted." "You're not going to let them strong-arm you back in line, are you?" She turned to face him, her chin lifting slightly. "Not this time." The lights dimmed then, and the room settled into a hush. Sadie's class took the stage, a sea of paper crowns and cardboard trees. Rowan watched Sienna as much as the play, how her gaze never left Sadie, how her hand curled tightly around the flowers in her lap. She was trying to be invisible in this small town scene, but she glowed anyway. After the applause faded and the kids poured off the stage, Sadie ran straight to them, her cheeks flushed, her voice breathless. "Did you see me? I didn't forget any of my words." Rowan crouched and scooped her into a hug. "You were perfect." Sienna knelt beside them and held out the flowers. "These are for the star of the show." Sadie's eyes went wide. "They're real, they are, just like your performance." Sadie threw her arms around her. "Thank you." As they walked toward the parking lot, Sadie skipping ahead to show her bouquet to a friend, Rowan glanced at Sienna. You didn't have to come tonight, but I'm glad you did. I wouldn't have missed it, she said. I can tell this thing with your board is serious. It is. You need help. I need space, she said. And maybe someone who believes in me when everything else feels like pressure. They reached his truck, and Rowan opened the door for Sadie, buckling her in while she chattered about glitter glue and stage lights. When he closed the door and turned back, Sienna was still standing there, her expression unreadable. I don't want to be a complication in your life, she said. You're not. But I might be if this gets messier. He stepped closer. I don't scare easy. She held his gaze for a beat longer, then sighed. Will you come to the city tomorrow? For what? I want to show you something. Something that means a lot to me, he hesitated. Sadie's got school. I'll have a car pick you up after you drop her off. You'll be back before dinner, he nodded. All right. The next morning, he found himself in the back of another glossy vehicle, the seats supple and the windows tinted. The driver said little, only offered him a bottle of water and a quiet, "We'll be there shortly." When the car stopped, Rowan stepped out and looked up. The building loomed like a monument glass, steel and sharp lines stretching into the sky. A plaque near the entrance read, Cade Tower. Inside, everything gleamed. The marble lobby floor echoed with polished footsteps, and people in suits moved with purpose. Sienna met him at the elevator, her expression calm but her fingers fidgeting slightly. This is where they expect me to be every day, she murmured as the elevator rose. Where they want me to smile and nod and sign things that don't sit right. The doors opened to a sprawling office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline stretched out behind her desk like a painting. But instead of leading him to it, she turned down a hallway and opened a door to a glass-walled room filled with shelves. These are the companies I've invested in personally, she said, gesturing to the boxes and prototypes lining the walls. Ones the board didn't approve. Single mothers starting bakeries, veterans building tech startups, kids designing apps in their garages. Rowan stepped closer to a display. A photo of a woman holding a tray of cupcakes sat beside a framed article about her new storefront. You did this, he said. They call them distractions, she muttered, arms crossed. But they're the only part of this job that means anything to me. Rowan turned to her. Why show me this? Because you asked if I needed help. And the truth is, I need someone who reminds me why I started this in the first place. He looked around again, then back at her. This room's impressive, but you didn't have to bring me here to prove anything. She blinked. What do you mean, you already did? When you showed up for a second-grade play, when you listened to Sadie talk about pirate books like it was breaking news. Sienna's eyes softened. You keep doing that. Doing what? Looking at me like I'm not the sum of my mistakes. That's because you're not. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded document. He took it and scanned it. What is this? A formal rejection of the merger. I'm filing it today. Rowan looked up. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He folded the paper again and handed it back. Good, because I was going to talk you out of it anyway. She laughed, the sound fuller this time, and stepped closer. I don't know what comes next, she said. Neither do I. But I want to find out with you. Rowan nodded. Then let's figure it out, one day at a time. And when she leaned in, he didn't hesitate. Not because it was sudden or reckless, but because it was right. Because it was the moment everything had been building toward. Because this wasn't the end of something impossible, it was the beginning of something real. The sky above the Jensen house was streaked with the soft gold of early evening, the last traces of sunlight melting into a pale lavender haze. The air was cool, the scent of wood smoke faint in the distance. Rowan stood at the edge of the porch, one hand resting on the railing, the other holding a ceramic mug that had long gone cold. He didn't notice. Inside, Sadie's laughter echoed faintly through the open window as she and the neighbor's teenage daughter, Emily, played an elaborate board game. Emily babysat sometimes when Rowan had to work late, and tonight she'd offered to stay a little longer so he could have a quiet moment with Sienna. He heard the crunch of gravel before he saw the car. Sienna stepped out, dressed in a long camel-colored coat, her hair pulled back in a low twist. She walked up the steps slowly, carefully, as though she were weighing every breath. I parked out of sight, she said, stopping at the top. Didn't want to make your neighbors stare. They stare anyway, Rowan said, setting the mug down. You could have walked up carrying a goat and wearing a tiara, they'd still talk. Sienna gave a quiet laugh, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. You all right? He asked. I had a meeting today. When I couldn't dodge, let me guess, more boardroom knife throwing. Close, she said. They wanted to discuss how my personal entanglements might reflect on the company's public image. Rowan folded his arms. And by that, they mean me. They didn't say your name, but yes, he held her gaze. You want to tell me that's a problem? No, she said quietly. I want you to know I told them I don't care what their image consultants think. That I'm not apologizing for the people I choose to have in my life. Rowan nodded slowly. Good, but it's not over, she said. They're pushing for a vote next month. If they get enough support, they could remove me as CEO. You worried? I'm ready, she said, but it's going to be public. And messy, and I don't want that storm touching you or Sadie. Don't do that, he said, voice low. Don't start pulling away to protect us. We're not fragile. I know, she said, but you didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be needed either, he said. But here we are. Sienna took a breath, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I've been working on something, she said, handing it to him. If the board votes me out, I'll still have control of the Cade Foundation. My father left it to me directly. I've been restructuring it, refocusing it. Rowan glanced at the document, an outline of a new program for single-parent entrepreneurs, complete with grant tiers and mentorship plans. You did this. It's just a draft, she said, but I want you to help shape it. You know what it means to start from zero, he looked up. You want me to run this with you? I want you to be part of something that matters, she said. You already are, I just want to make it official. Rowan folded the paper carefully, slid it into his jacket. You sure about this? I've never been more sure about anything. A soft knock interrupted them. Sadie stood in the doorway, barefoot, eyes wide. Emily said it's okay if I stay up for just 10 more minutes, she said quickly. Can I come outside? Come on out, Rowan said, stepping aside. Sadie patted over and leaned against Sienna's side, her small fingers curling around her wrist. I made you something, she said. Sienna knelt down as Sadie pulled a folded construction paper card from behind her back. It was covered in glitter glue and stickers and a big, wobbly drawing of the three of them standing under a tree. Sienna opened it. Inside, in blocky, uneven letters, I'm glad you are in our family. Sienna's breath caught. I didn't know if I was allowed to say that, Sadie said. But I feel it. Sienna pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. You're allowed, she whispered. You're absolutely allowed. Rowan watched them, his chest tightening in a way that had nothing to do with fear anymore. It was something else, something fuller. You staying in town tonight? He asked. I booked a room, Sienna said as she stood, brushing a fleck of glitter from her coat. Didn't want to assume. Rowan looked at her, then at Sadie, who was now twirling barefoot in the grass. You don't have to book rooms anymore, he said. You have a place here, she turned slowly. Are you asking me to stay? I'm asking you to come home. Sienna didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward and kissed him slow, steady, real. It wasn't about fireworks, it was about choosing. When she pulled back, her eyes shimmered in the porch light. I'll go grab my bag, she said with a smile. By the end of the week, the town knew. People stared at the grocery store, whispered at the diner, but no one said anything to Rowan's face. They knew better. And when Sienna walked beside him, hand in hand with Sadie, they stopped looking and started understanding. Then came the vote. Rowan stayed home that day, pacing the living room while Sadie built a fort out of couch cushions. He didn't know what he'd say if Sienna called and told him they'd pushed her out, but she didn't call, she showed up. She walked in the front door, her coat over her arm, her shoes muddy from the walk up the drive. Rowan met her in the kitchen. Well, he asked. They tried, she said, setting her coat on the chair. They failed. You're still CEO, for now, she said with a grin. But I gave them a choice. Either they back my direction, or I step down and take the foundation's funding with me. He raised an eyebrow. You threatened them. I gave them a very polite ultimatum. He stepped forward, brushing her hair behind her ear. So you won. I didn't win, we did. That night they didn't go out. They stayed in, cooking pasta with whatever was left in the fridge. Sadie insisted on setting the table with paper napkins folded into triangles. Sienna laughed when the sauce boiled over, and Rowan didn't care that the floor got messy. After dinner, they sat on the porch, the stars scattered across the sky like pieces of something unfinished. "I want to build a life with you," Sienna said. "Not a fantasy, a real one, messy, honest, and full." Rowan took her hand. "So do I." And when Sadie leaned her head against Sienna's arm, her eyelids heavy, Rowan knew they were already there, not just falling in love, not just surviving the storm. They were something stronger, something whole. The June air was heavy with honeysuckle as Rowan stepped through the back gate, wiping sweat from his brow with the hem of his shirt. The backyard had transformed over the past few weeks. What was once patchy grass and a rusted swing set had become a shaded oasis of raised garden beds, fresh gravel paths, and a handmade wooden bench beneath the old maple tree. Sienna knelt by a planter box, her hands dirt-smudged, gently tying up the stems of a tomato plant with twine. She glanced up. "They're finally starting to bud. They're gonna taste better knowing you didn't give up after the squirrels dug up the first batch," Rowan said, tossing his work gloves aside as he joined her. "I used to have people who handled things like squirrels. Now you've got me." She smiled, and he leaned down to kiss her temple before settling onto the bench. Sadie's voice drifted from inside the house, reading aloud from one of her new books. Emily was inside with her today. Rowan had insisted on paying her this time, and Sienna hadn't argued. They sat quietly for a moment, the only sounds the rustle of leaves and the faint splash of water from the little fountain Sienna had insisted on installing after Rowan said the garden needed something that sounded like peace. "I got a call from the head of the foundation today," she said, brushing her hands on her jeans. They finished the first round of grant approvals. Rowan raised an eyebrow. Already, 3 single parents were selected, one starting a mobile mechanic service, another's opening a daycare in her home, and the third's launching an online tutoring platform for kids in rural areas. He let that sink in. "That's real." "Very. You did that," he said. "Correction," she replied, meeting his eyes. "We did." He reached for her hand, still streaked with soil. "You ever think we'd get here?" "I didn't even know I wanted to," she said. "Until I did, all at once." The screen door creaked open, and Sadie came bounding down the steps, barefoot and carrying a folded piece of paper. "Daddy, Sienna, look," she handed it to them proudly. It was a drawing, crayon lines in every direction, but unmistakable. A house with a garden, a tree taller than the roof, and 3 stick figures holding hands. Rowan looked down at the drawing, then back at Sadie. "Is this us?" "Yep, this is our forever house." Sienna's lips parted slightly. Her eyes softened as she knelt down and pulled Sadie into her arms. "It's beautiful." "I'm gonna hang it in the kitchen," Sadie said before darting back inside. Rowan watched her disappear into the house. "She's changed. She feels safe." "She is." Sienna stood and brushed the dirt from her knees. "You know, I was supposed to be in Milan this week. For work, for distraction," she said. "I scheduled it months ago, but I canceled it last month. I didn't even think twice. Because of us. Because of what I want." She turned to face him fully now, the fading light catching in her eyes. "And what I want is rooted here, with you, with her, with this life we've built." Rowan stepped closer. "You sure?" "Last chance to run off and sip espresso in silk pants somewhere. I've got everything I need right here." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Then it's a good thing I was hoping you'd say that." Her breath caught as he opened it, a simple ring, a delicate gold band with a single square-cut diamond, elegant and understated. She stared at it, expression frozen in disbelief. "I don't have a yacht," he said, voice steady. "I don't have a private jet or a vineyard in Tuscany, but I've got a daughter who adores you, a steady job that pays the bills, and a heart that's yours if you want it." Sienna looked up at him, tears beginning to gather. "Rowan, I love you, and I want to marry you, not because it's perfect. Not because it's easy, but because you're the only person I want beside me when it's hard." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and she wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. Sadie's voice rang out from the doorway. "Did she say yes?" Sienna pulled back just enough to beam at her. "She did." Sadie squealed and ran straight into them, all limbs and joy, hugging their legs tight. Rowan looked down at both of them, his arms wrapped around the two people who had rewritten his life. A month later, they were married in the backyard, under the maple tree, Sadie tossing petals down the aisle in a flower crown she'd made herself. The ceremony was small, just friends from town, a few of Sienna's colleagues who'd become true allies, and the families they'd helped through the foundation. No press, no limousines, just laughter, tears, and the kind of vows that came from weathered hearts. Rowan wore a navy suit Sadie had picked out. Sienna wore a sleeveless ivory dress that moved like water and no shoes at all. They wrote their own vows. Rowan's voice cracked when he promised her forever. Sienna's shook when she promised not to run when things got messy. They danced on the grass beneath strings of warm lights, their first dance to an old record that skipped once halfway through. No one minded. Sadie led the second dance, standing on Rowan's feet while Sienna laughed and clapped along. The night ended with them sitting on the bench under the tree, her head on his shoulder, Sadie asleep across their laps. "I never thought I'd be this happy," she whispered. He kissed her temple. "Guess falling in love wasn't on your quarterly roadmap. And thank God for that." She closed her eyes, fingers laced with his. All around them the world slowed. The lights twinkled, the crickets sang, and the soil beneath their feet held the roots of something far deeper than either of them had expected. A life not built on power or wealth or legacy, but on love, the kind that stays.